Let's just say this. I'm Abby with Motorcycle Nerds, by the way. Make sure you subscribe, comment, share. It really helps me out a lot. Copy the link. You don't have to post anywhere. Liking the video helps me so much, for real. My Jurassic Park review's up. But I'm going to say this. You guys remember when I said this? Stop peopling around in Transformers. Stop it. 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 Less people, more robot fighting. How does this not people around like that, and yet there are people operating the robots? And I love Guillermo del Toro. I know I'm biased. He's my favorite director of all time. But, oh my God. I feel like this does not get the acknowledgement that it deserves. Ramin Djawadi's score is outstanding. Idris Elba is great. I don't understand. Like, everything about this is great. Monsters and robots fighting is a universal language. There were times where, whether it was in Crimson Typhoon, which was the Chinese Jaeger, the Russian one, there were times when everybody was speaking in their native language, but we did not need subtitles. Sometimes we got subtitles, but sometimes we didn't, because that's the thing with film. We know what's going on. We don't have to know what they're saying, because we know what's going on. It's time to beat some ass. It's time to go out in a robot and beat some ass, and pick up freights and smash them into the other thing that we're fighting. And it's like, that's what we want. And you want to know what I really appreciate about this? They did not give a shit. They do make a point to put people in the bunker, and we'll get to that, but they don't give a shit about, like, destruction. And that's exactly what we want. Like, yeah, I remember when everybody was going nuts about the DC universe not saving anybody, and I'm like, no, that checks out because they're heroes. This is giant mechs fighting, and I love everything about this movie. I think Pacific Rim does not get the acknowledgement it deserves. Is it, like, I mean, it's pretty damn good. And I respect anything that I can watch with a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, 60, 70, and all be entertained. We all like watching monsters get the shit kicked out of them by robots. And it's sick, and the detail in this is striking. But I feel like they handled the exposition really well. I feel like the drift stuff, everything is explained to you so perfectly in the first 5 minutes. And it's like, no, I'm not expecting. Do you want to know what? I should stop saying that, because this is better than Transformers. This is way better than Transformers. It is. It's better than Transformers. And you guys know how I've been down my Dark Tower rabbit hole lately. And I click on an interview with Guillermo del Toro about this just to hear what he had to say right before I did this. One of the first words out of his mouth? I wanted him to have the silhouette of a gunslinger. I wanted him to be blatantly from the West, because that's not it's normally an East thing, having a mech or a kaiju, and he was like, so I wanted one to be specifically, because he's from Mexico, so he was like, I specifically wanted to be Western inspired, and I was like, shut up, that's awesome. And Idris Elba's there, even though the Dark Tower's an abomination and an affront to the fandom, but still, he's there, and he's great. No, everything is explained to you, like, bing bang boom, it's Guillermo del Toro greatness, and I love it. How can you not go into this and have fun? I think it's a little over the top at points, but I think it's supposed to be that way, right? Yeah, because I own this, so I was like, wait. And I did the same thing with my Jurassic Park one, where I'm like, I'm happy that they all got messed up, because then I actually sat down and really paid attention to both of these again. I wasn't like going in and out. I didn't have my phone, whatever. And like I said, this score really kicks things up a notch. I was worried. I was like, wait, do we spend too much time with this wall? Wait, do we spend too much time with these science folk, even though it's Charlie Day? And I can never remember the actor's name. That dude, the other scientist who acts all quirky, that actor blows my mind, because do you want to know who he is? He's in Game of Thrones, who kills Lord Commander Mormont at Craster's Keep. Yeah, but we start out with Riley. We start out with, Charlie Hunnam. He was like all the rage, but you have to remember that they were doing Sons of Anarchy back then, and Guillermo's super tight with Ron Perlman. And I do like his little role in this, and I was worried about those parts of it, because like I said, when I go to see robots fighting other robots, or robots fighting giant monsters, I want to see robots fighting. And I realized, I think that this movie, I don't have an exact number, but I realized that first fight is almost over a half hour long. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are getting it right. How can Transformers not? And you don't have a name like Guillermo del Toro behind you. So I'm not even expecting that much out of you. And then I watch this, and I'm like, I did like Rise of Beasts, and I still do. But god damn, this is so good. This is so damn good. And I'm like, no, this is a pretty good movie all in all. Why are our expectations so low for Transformers? Thanks a lot, Michael Bay. The main character, we have the drift stuff explained to us. It's pretty basic we're drift compatible. You need 2 people to run a robot. Bing, bang, boom. You have to have a tight bond. That's it. That's all. Let's go. We're off to the races. And like I said, I thought we were going to dilly-dally places, and then we weren't. We were not. It was, here we go. And the one thing that I will say is accurate, because I worked in a factory for 10 years, is that is totally something accurate that would happen, is if you had a bunch of blue-collar workers in a crew like that, and, I mean, they were doing some, like, Depression era shit where they were like, well, we lost 3 people, but guess what? 3 jobs are open. I never had to deal with that. But I've been in a giant crowd of us and they're saying some nonsense or some like stuff. And we're just, but when somebody yelled out, give us the bad news or something like that, I laughed so hard because I was like, no, that would be us. The detail. Oh my God, the detail in this is awesome. When we first suit up in the mech, before we even lose the brother, oh my God, it's so good. It's so awesome. And they try to play hero. The brother gets killed. But one thing that they really do bring home in this is they do bring all the dialogue back around. Riley saying later on, I'm really sorry with how much I brought into the drift because I was attached to my brother when he passed, so I got a whole lot of his stuff in there. It's like, that's a crazy, messed up thing, you know? This is still very layered for what it is if you want to scratch the surface. It's kind of jacked up that they screwed up the other one so bad. Like, you guys kind of just threw him in the pit. And it's like, this is good. This is a good movie. Idris Elba shows up at this wall that they're building around it, and he knows, he's like, this is BS, this wall ain't gonna work, stop working on it. And then he has the best lines, and not only does he play like a father figure to Mako, but when he says he's a fixed point, it's like, no, he is a father and a rallying point to these people, like to this entire group. When he walks through those hallways all suited up later on, you can tell everybody's like, oh, we got this shit, Marshall's getting involved. So Idris Elba shows up, he's like, would you rather die here or fighting in a Jaeger? And you're like, in a Jaeger, let's go. And then going in to Japan, that's where it's at, right? When they're landing, they do a pan, they pan the camera across and you see everything. Because that's when I got worried. I was like, oh yeah, the science-y shit. How much of that is going to be crammed in here? Are we going to be on that too much? And I was like, because I want to get to the robots and the monsters fighting, you know, the thing I'm here for. I love Charlie Day, but I was like, I can't remember. And I love Guillermo del Toro, so I should just remember that it's great. But doing a review, I look at it differently. But we see everybody. We see the science guys unloading. We have Mako walking out. We have the Bulldog running out. We have Riley and Marshall pulling up. And we just see all these people that aren't together yet, but little snippets of each of them. And you get to know them. I really liked him knowing Japanese and being like, hey, I can understand you and don't do that. And I liked that. We find out that the Jaeger program is getting canceled. The government's putting all the money into the wall, but now Marshall's calling in all his favors, and it's like a military base pretty much. Something's wrong with Marshall, with Idris Elba from the very beginning. He's having to take medication, so we know something's wrong with him. Found out that Riley is the last one of the Mach 3, and that's all they have left, and he needs to run it. God damn, Idris gets you hype every time he talks. And I will say this, I don't feel like we spent too much time with the sciencey stuff or with Ron Perlman. I felt like they were pretty short, honestly. I don't think we stayed with them for more, them alone, without other people getting involved or the Jaegers going out, for more than like 3 minutes. 3 minutes at a time, you know what I mean? Like, obviously they were in the movie for more than 3 minutes, but we never are with them for like a very long period of time. It's always going right back to what are we doing with this fight? We are the resistance. It's awesome. We have the war clock counting down. So every time a kaiju comes, it resets. And then we meet the science guys, guy from Janelle and Charlie Day. And at first I was like, is this going to come off wacky? And you got to remember, Guillermo del Toro cameoed in Always Sunny, I think more than once. I know he's the McPoyle with the bird on his head in court, for sure. He loves Always Sunny. They're buds. I thought they were funny. I thought they worked. I like having 2 people be in the same thing but be opposites. So we have these 2 science guys that are total opposites. I liked having Charlie be this groupie, and then later on he's like, no, this isn't all it's cracked up to be when it's coming at you. And I feel like he did need to get knocked down a peg, and it works. So essentially this is our last Hail Mary. The government stopped funding us, yada, yada, yada. I will say this. I love that the way Guillermo del Toro kind of handles like the stereotypes of everybody and their Jaeger is handled well. So you're like, no, this is awesome. I love it. Like, the Russians is the oldest and the heaviest, and they don't even need, I love how they didn't need to get dropped. They could walk right out. The other ones got dropped. If you notice, the Russian one does not get dropped. It's the oldest, it's the biggest, and it's the heaviest or something. And there's just so much attention to detail in this, and I'm like, it's robots beating up monsters. Why do we expect trash? This is actually a good movie. Yeah, so we have the Russians that are just sturdy and stoic, and then we have the Chinese, Crimson Typhoon, and there's 3 of them, and there's 3 on all their stuff, and it's really technologically advanced. And then we have the Australians, there's Stryker, and theirs is the Mach 5, and it's the fastest one. The American, who's got analog, and it's not run on technology. And I just said this in my Jurassic Park thing. I built trucks for 10 years. Let me tell you what, electric cars, I have nothing against it. They will never fully take over. I watched technology screw up daily. That was what caused repairs. People would be like, I think that torqued out, but I don't think it says it registered, but yeah, go catch it. And like, that happens all the time. I mean, but of course we have to have the American one that's like analog and ready to go and kind of beat up, but we all love it. And establishing we are the resistance, establishing who everybody is, and then 2 seconds later he goes, if you, like, what is the plan? He's like, what are we doing here, Marshall? And he's like, oh, by the way, I've got nukes. I'm going to strap them to this, and we're going to go down there, and we're going to blow it up. And Riley's like, okay, how are you getting all that? This is not like this is the one thing where I'm like, well, I guess if you were in that world, it wouldn't be so surprising. Acting very nonchalant about this, like nukes being here or whatever he said, but you see the Russians back there? Yeah, they can get us anything. And he's like, okay, so that establishes there's a black market. So that way when Ron Perlman comes back around, this all is a world and a thing. So they really are the resistance. Like, they ain't getting funding, they ain't getting nothing, they're getting everything on the black market. When we need to hear them speak in English, they do, or when we need to see subtitles, we do. But there are times in the Jaegers where they're speaking Russian and we don't need it, where the Chinese are speaking, and we don't need to hear any of it because we know what the deal is. They're going out to fight. Note that says cool dad, because the cool Australian dad shows up, and then we meet his dick son and their dog later on, and the dog's cute, and the son and Riley go at it a bit, but then by the end they're like, it's cool, we respect each other type deal. But I did like his redemption part of it. I thought that was sick. But it also says a lot about that character. When you and your dad are the ones, like, that's the only parent-kid duo. Think about that. Like, think about that. That's the only parent-kid duo, and that's hefty. And when they're both like, are we just gonna go to the top of this thing? Suicide mission this? And both of them are like, yeah, I mean, you gotta be pretty ballsy to do that. But, so there's some tension there. But then when they bring him back for that, and he's cheering for Riley, and he's cheering for Mako, when they show up in Gypsy Danger, it's a great scene. And it's not like he did anything that egregious. Like having Riley meet the science guy and be like kind of horrified at the fact that he was like a groupie of them. And like I said, later on we have him realize like, okay, I kind of like these from afar, but now it's not so cool. But I feel like even Guillermo del Toro knew, and the writers knew, like, don't focus on the sciencey shit, because we get through everything Charlie Day says, and then when the other guy goes to talk, Marshall literally cuts him off. It's like, it's in the first scene. I'm like, oh, are we going to be spending too much time here? And I was like, oh my God, he cuts him right off, and he's like, shut up, I like your plan, we'll come back to you, I'm not going to hear this, just let me know answers, let's go, 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 and we just keep it moving. Charlie Day wants to drift with the kaiju brain and see what it thinks. The mathematician is like, no, we're going to have a double, triple event, like, we're not going to have one coming through, we're going to have 2, 3, and it's going to be total apocalypse. And I like that they both end up being right. Let's talk about Mako's character, because at the end I was like, do they kiss? And I was like, oh no. And then even when he says, I never was good with timing, and he says like, I liked you, essentially, I'm like, no, because you're in each other's heads. You know what I mean? Like, you are knowing this person better than anybody. You feel me? So you don't need to say all this stuff. Also, it's the end of the world. She stood on her own 2 feet. I really liked all that. I'm like, I feel like the stuff between her and Idris Elba hit, and we don't even see that, like, we don't see that much, like, family stuff between them. But it's emotional when he's like, you gotta protect me now. And she's like, okay. And it's like, man, dude, it hits you right in the feelings. She's the first one to step up and say something to that dick son. When that son said, keep your bitch on a leash, or like, one of you bitches needs to be on a leash, I was like, damn, man. I was like, we never get that anymore. And I feel like because we don't, I'm not saying you have tons of swearing, but if you got a PG-13 rating, at least throw some in there, because it's like the impact happens when he says that to her, and then Riley hits him. It's like, it's on, let's go. And the impact is there. That's what dialogue is supposed to do. You feel me? Like, that's what it's there for. So even if you're 8, you're going, oh my God, he said something really bad, he deserved to get hit. So the first little chunk is Riley and Mako becoming drift compatible. But we kind of already knew that was going to happen. But at first, Marshall's not letting it happen. And Riley doesn't know why. He's like, if that's your best student, why won't you let her do this? And she really wants to do it, so I don't understand. Like, you know something's up, but this moves so quick that it's like, it's not annoying or played out or cheesy. Her character, like I said, they don't like kiss at the end. She stands her own ground. She fights on her own. She wants to do these things. And once again, and I feel like not having them kiss at the end and just having them hug is like, no, I'm my own character. But look at how Guillermo del Toro handles his female characters. Look at Ophelia. Look at Mercedes. Look at these characters he's done. He's great with female characters. And going, no, I'm going to let them stand on their own 2 feet and do the things they want to do. And okay, let's go. But we still have this, like, I didn't think we were going to make it through this, but I do got feelings for you. But like I said, because you're drifting, you don't need to say everything. Even between the father and son, they're like, when you drift, you don't need to say it all. And they're both like, I know. I really loved the scene where she's really scoring him harshly in this fighting class to find his new Jaeger partner, even though we all know it's going to be her. And Marshall's there, and she's there, and she's really being critical of him. And then he's like, what's your problem? And I love having a character. This is like a very relatable thing because we normally don't talk like movies. Normally we talk like this when he's like, what's your deal? What's up with your face? And then she's like didn't expect to get called out for that. And he's like, you do this little thing with your face and then you write my score. And I want to know what's the deal. And she says it. You are not taking them 2 moves sooner, or you're not doing this. And if you're so great, I should be scoring you higher. Also, I really liked her pulling like you remember in the Tournament of Power with Goku and Vegeta, and they're like, the only reason they can keep Jiren back is because of their unpredictability. They're like, them attacking together is so different that it's throwing them off. That's essentially what's going on with Riley, and she's like, you're unpredictable, and that's your problem. He's like, no, my unpredictability is my strength. Before they go 1v1 in the class, I loved him, because she can't go out, and Marshall won't let her, and then he says, what, you don't want your best going up against me? And it's like, damn, and then Marshall just goes, get out there, and she just goes, and that's great. And like I said, to establish the character so well that we know what the deal is, that's awesome, and keep it moving. So if we're not fighting in giant mech suits, we're fighting over here, and it's full of stuff. And the detail, I cannot get over the detail in the kaijus, the detail in the Jaegers, the detail in the city was sick. Oh my god. Oh, and the whole time when she's fighting him in the class, we have Idris Elba in the background going, remember control, remember control. So that's established for when they finally say you can do this, and they go on their trial run, and she almost murks everybody. She goes too far into her feelings. But with dialogue, we established she has issues keeping that under control, especially when she's fighting. Throughout it, we have Marshall looking at the news, looking at headlines, so we know what's going on in the world and how bad it's getting out there, even for the average person. Then we have Charlie Day drifting with the kaiju. And I audibly laughed when the other one comes running in and says, like, Newton made a neural connector out of garbage, and now he's drifted with a kaiju. Like, the way he says it and the way Idris Elba looks at him, and I think it's just, like, the absurdity of what's being said, if you really think about it, and how serious everybody is. It's like, but it was great. It was super funny. So he finds out about the Hive plan. He finds out that these are, like, they send out the scouts, and they eradicate as much as they can. Then they get all the information they can. Then they report back. And then the second wave is even worse. And then eventually we're completely eradicated. And that we have essentially, by polluting our planet, have terraformed it for these beings to show up. After that happens is when Marshall gives his blessing for her to get into the Jaeger and gives the shoe back. So we know something's up. So when she's in there and losing it, and then she comes back, and I really did like that Riley was super supportive. He was super supportive throughout this. He was like, no, you got this, but hey, and with every situation. We don't dilly-dally on stupid memories. We speed through them. Speed through. Go back to the mech. Speed through. And then it cuts out after she almost blows everybody up. And they're like, oh no, that's a problem. I don't know if they can go out. And then they get a kaiju attack. And that's when we first see the Russian one, the Chinese one, and the Australian one all dip out to go fight. And like I said, this fight is like a half hour long, and it's sick. And first Crimson Typhoon goes out, and then they get taken out, and it's brutal, and it's crazy, and it's awesome. There's 2 kaijus, and it's wild. And then we don't see the second one. Then the Russians are getting beat down, and it's like, oh no, that's scary. And even though Stryker, the Australians, are supposed to stay back, they're like, nah, man, we're going out there. And so then they're running as fast as they can through the water, and I'm like, this is so freaking cool. But they don't establish the relationship between Marshall and Mako there. They wait a minute. And then Riley and Marshall have their talk, and he's like, man, I was in her head, I saw it. And then we go back. And the way they handled that, we do not see the kaiju fight. When we first drift, we see the Jaeger get dropped off. And we see the little girl. The next time when Riley's talking to Marshall about, like, just let her do it, man. I was in her head. I see I see what your relationship is. I see what you did for her. And just showing this little girl, this little innocent girl, scared as hell, and hearing the destruction behind her, and then it's done, and then it's quiet, and then she goes out there, and Idris Elba's up there like a goddamn hero, looking awesome in the light, looking sick, but we also see he's alone, and him and Riley are the only ones to ever have piloted a Jaeger successfully alone at all. For him to be able to fight in one is crazy. After the drift with the kaiju brain, that's when Idris Elba's like, yo, I got a plug, you can go talk to him. It ends up being Ron Perlman. Kind of cheesy, but I didn't mind it. What I really loved is Guillermo del Toro saying that he wanted this mech to look like a gunslinger. And if you listen to the score, and Ramin Djawadi is my favorite composer right now, you can hear those Western tones come in. Not only do you hear that when you hear Marshall show up in his suit, when you hear Ron Perlman show up, when Ron Perlman walks, it's almost like spurs when a bad guy walks in a Western. When Marshall comes walking in his mech suit, you can hear the spurs on the ground like the good cowboys walking into town. And I was like, oh no, you really were going there. And slight variations in the score change. And I'm like, oh man, dude, this is good. Now, mind you, when Mako and Riley had their mishap happen with their trial run, everybody was there because it's like the big boss's daughter's doing it. So it's like we're expecting something, or people are just dicks. So there's creeping, and then it's like you almost obliterated all of us. So now everybody's like kind of standoffish towards them. So we have Charlie Day going to meet up with Ron Perlman in the black market and figure out if he can get a kaiju brain to drift with again. Then we have the fight happening in the water. And like I said, this is going on, and then I was worried if we were spending too much time with Ron Perlman. No, each time it's like a minute and a half or 30 seconds maybe, and he gets the information right out. It's like, this, and this. Are you stupid? Do you know what that means? You opened up a two-way street. You drifted that way, they drifted this way. Now they know what the deal is. They're coming for you. Now remember, they had 2 kaijus out, and we've only seen the one fighting, and it's taken out Crimson Typhoon, it's taken out the Russians, and then when Stryker, the Australians, are running up, the sneak attack out of the water happens, and that's when they get jacked up, and then they get hit with a blast that knocks all their power out, and it's wild. And then they're like, what should we do? And that's when they pull their whole suicide mission. Like, no, let's just go shoot it with flares and piss it off. And let's give it one last roar at the sun. And that's when they look up and they see Gypsy Danger getting dropped off. And that's when Marshall allows Mako and Riley to go out and fight together in their mech. And oh my God, their Jaeger's sick. This was so cool. This is what we want to see. We want to see you have swords. We want to see you picking up freights. We want to see you bashing heads in. That's what we want. And it's so cool. We have them take out the first kaiju. Then we have another one. And at first we just think it's land-bound. But when that thing sprouted wings, that was crazy. And when they whipped their sword out, that was awesome. I've seen this before. Obviously, I've seen this a lot. I love it. But I don't, like, regularly watch it a ton. So I knew the sword was coming, but there were other things I definitely didn't remember. So the Charlie Day scenes, when he goes and talks to Ron Perlman. He's like, yeah, I'll hook you up. Then he goes to then he ends up in the bunker, and we see how the average person ends up in one of these bunkers, but we do establish that they're down there so we can just eradicate the city. And the city looked so cool and lit awesome off the Jaeger, and it was so cool. Using a boat as a weapon, that's what we want, Transformers. Pick some shit up and smash their head in. But they get the first kaiju down. Now they're going for the one. It hasn't sprouted wings yet, but that one's really going for Charlie Day. And that's when he's like, oh my God, this is the worst. And they get taken up into the air, and they cut off the wing, and they're falling. And that's when they've been calling it analog. They've been saying that the core is different on theirs, but that's when we really see it for the first time, and that's why they don't get obliterated when they hit the ground. The fight goes on for like 35 minutes. It's insane. And I was like, I love this so much. Why can't Transformers get this right? Idris Elba, some of the best lines when he's like, do not let my calm demeanor fool you, soldier, or fool you, ranger. I was like, oh my God. It was everything he said had such impact, but he was saying so little. Like when Riley touches him and he looks down, he doesn't even say nothing. And then he says, 1, don't touch me. 2, don't touch me. You don't know who I am. Yada, yada, yada. And that was great. It was great. And I think that little part was the most he spoke in one go. The drop is so sick. I love them getting dropped in. That is so cool. Like everything about the fighting is awesome. First he yells, empty the clip on the first one. That was sick. But then after, when he's like, oh, we got to check for a pulse, and you just unload on him, I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. That was just for funsies. Let's do it. But they get out of that one. The other Jaegers are taken out. We have the Australians left. They get booted back up, so they have the Australians, and we have Gypsy Danger left. They still want to go through the plan. It's still happening. And then we have Charlie Day trying to go get this kaiju brain with Ron Perlman. And then they think it's dead, and it's not, and he gets snatched up by, like, a baby one. But I liked how that all just stopped. I liked that didn't go on for too long, because I was like, man, stop this. And then I was like, okay, this works. And so they get the brain out of that, because it can't survive for very long. And then that's the one that he drifts with. But I liked that him and his science buddy did it together. They were like, we'll share the load, and they figure out more stuff. Now, the way they do the exposition in this, it's like I said, for an adult, a kid watching this is just going to go, oh, this is awesome. An adult watching it is going to go, oh, okay, we're establishing things. So their plan will work, but they need a kaiju to go through their little portal at the bottom of the ocean, right? So the plan Marshall had is still happening. They just have to strategically do it differently. Not a lot of like lovey-dovey family stuff or anything like that, but it still emotionally hits. And then when they're going, they don't know about the way to get through yet. They just think their plan will work. And the scientists are like, oh snap, we got to get to them as fast as we can and tell them like this is bad. And when they do the drop to go underwater, and they had a whole fight underwater, that was so freaking cool. That was so awesome. But when we have the canceling the apocalypse speech, that was so awesome. And yeah, when Idris Elba comes walking through, you can see it on, this is the attention to detail that Guillermo del Toro has, though. You can see it on the people around, you can see it on the extras, that they're all like, you know, we were pretty down and out before. If you watch the first half, they're not, like, looking up, a lot of people have their heads down. When he comes walking through, everybody's erect, like, oh shit, it's happening. I did like Marshall saying, like, because I've done this so much, I don't bring anything into the drift. I can drift with anybody. I totally forgot that the son dies. That was a rough goodbye between him and the dad. Mako and Idris Elba's stuff, that made me, oh my god, that broke my heart. Then he gives a speech, it's great, they drop into the water, they have no idea, they get told like, hey, you need to snatch one of them up like a barcode to get through, and then let off the bomb. But Idris Elba and that son won't make it through this fight, so they're like, we're about to blow an atom bomb over here, and we're gonna take as many out with us as we can, you snatch one up, and you go. And they try to make us, this is the one big issue I have with it, stop trying to make us think that Riley, you're not gonna kill Charlie Hunnam, shut up. One thing I will say, it gets a little dark underwater, but I was shocked at how good because I was worried about that. I was like, man, this is 10 years old. It might look not as good as I remember. And then I was like, no, dude, this looks sick. Oh, yeah, see, I have the second one wrote down because I was so impressed with the other one. At 1 hour and 42 minutes, they get dropped into the water. They're underwater with a Category 5 fighting and all that stuff. Yeah, no, for like 20 minutes, they're underwater fighting. And they get told that, then they got to get in. And obviously, Charlie Hunnam lives. He blows up his Jaeger. They use, like, pods to shoot to the surface. But it's like, man, we got giant mechs. I'm not going to worry about the pod stuff. And this is a good movie. This is a good movie. And I think this had, I can't believe they wasted the potential it had. Like, you had Guillermo del Toro set this up. Like, you can't just willy-nilly go in with nothing. And there's so much heart in this. There's so much love in this. And can I just say this? Like I said, it's robots fighting. There's not much to review other than the fact that there is shit to review is crazy. Because we're so used to having not so great giant robot fighting movies, you know? But this is good. And if you have nothing to do, throw on Pacific Rim. Wow, yeah, that they really threw this away down the tubes. This could have been a great franchise. But besides that, this is, I mean, this is hitting on all cylinders, and I don't care how old you are. Robots beating the shit out of monsters is awesome. It's awesome. Maybe if we all remembered things when we were 12, the world would be a better place. Like, if I was, you know, like, I want to feel like a 10-year-old when I'm watching robots fighting on screen for an hour. What? You don't? That's stupid. Beat the hell out of them. Let's go. It's like you're playing with action figures. Come on. The world is your oyster. Pick up a boat. Pick up a skyscraper. Let's fucking fight, man. I feel like these characters were well developed. I feel like we didn't dilly-dally with science people. Like I said with Transformers, why are we peopling around so much? This was ran by people. This was about people, and I didn't feel like we were peopling around. I would say that your characters are more well developed too. This is a actually good movie on top of being fun and awesome and cool. We beat the kaijus, we beat the monsters, we're rocking our giant mech suits. It's awesome. No, it emotionally hit. It does impact you. You do feel a certain kind of way. It's funny at times. This is fun. This is good. I was listening to an interview with Guillermo del Toro, and then I listened to one with him for Pinocchio, and I'm like, the way he has such love for every project he does is, I love him for that. He'd be talking about A Shape of Water, his Oscar-winning movie, but he's going to talk about Pacific Rim the same way. And the way he talks about Pan's Labyrinth is the same way he's going to talk about Pinocchio. He has love for all of this so much. He has love for the medium. He respects it, and you can just see it, and he's just adorable. I love him. But yeah, if you haven't seen Pacific Rim, it's 10 years old, it's sick, Transformers don't even touch it, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's like a marvel to look at sometimes. Transformers, what's your excuse? You have the biggest robot IP fighting other robots thing ever, and that showed you 10 years ago, put robots on the screen, assholes, get these people out of here. Who walks into Transformers and goes, I'm really here for the people? Nobody is here for the people. We are here for the robots fighting, and I was shocked at how much robot fighting we got. Just me going, I'm nerding out and I love this shit. Go check it out. I'm Abby with Motor City Nerds. I'm on OnlyF, I'm on TikTok, I'm on all this stuff down below. Comment, share, subscribe. Tell me what you think about Pacific Rim. And I can't believe this is 10 years old. I saw this at midnight when it came out and nobody was there. Nobody wanted to go. And my friend worked there, so I got to go. Maybe there's like half a theater. And I was like, why aren't people more geeked about this? It just goes to show you, they threw this franchise away. This is a beautiful movie. This is an awesome score. Everything is awesome about this. Transformers, take notes. Relax and take notes, dude.